Welcome to this beginner-friendly tutorial on creating a navigation bar with HTML and CSS. In this video, you'll learn how to build a stylish navbar that will make it easy for users to navigate your website. We'll start by setting up the HTML structure for our navbar, then move on to styling it with CSS. The navigation bar is created using an unordered list UL with each navigation item represented by a list item li. Each navigation item consists of a hyperlink that contains both an icon I and a label span. The icons are represented using classes like AI Home, AI Image, AI File, and so on. These classes are most part of a custom icon font or icon library that the web developer is using to add visual interest to the navigation. The labels are the text that appears next to the icons and describe the purpose of each navigation item. The ref attribute of each hyperlink is set to hashtag in this example, which means that clicking on the navigation item won't take the user to a different page or location. This is a common practice when building a navigation menu, as it allows the developer to create the basic structure of the menu without worrying about the specific links it will contain. This code is a CSS stylesheet with styles for a web page. Here is a class-by-class explanation of the code: asterisk, asterisk, after, asterisk, before. These selectors apply the box sizing property to all elements, including any pseudo-elements that might be used. Body: this selector applies styles to the body element, such as setting the font family to inter and the line height to 1.5. The min height, display, and flex properties are used to center the content vertically and horizontally. The background color is set to hashtag E6143B, and a background image is added using a data URI. UL: this selector applies styles to UL elements, such as removing the default list style and setting the margin and padding to 0. The element is centered within its container and given a background color of hashtag 05043E. It is displayed as a flex container with a column direction and the items are spaced evenly. A box shadow is added for visual effect. Li nth child, 6, this selector applies styles to the sixth li element within a UL element. It adds a top margin, top padding, and a top border. Li plus li, this selector applies styles to every li element that immediately follows another li element. It adds a top margin. This selector applies styles to elements, such as setting the link color to white, removing the underline, and centering the contents vertically and horizontally. It also positions the span element that appears on hover or focus. An I element is used for an icon, and a span element is used for a tooltip that appears on hover or focus. Hover, focus, active. This selector applies styles to elements when they are hovered over, focused, or active. It changes the background color and removes any outline. Hover span, focus span, active span. This selector applies styles to span elements that appear on hover or focus of the element. It scales the element to 1 and sets the opacity to 1. This selector applies styles to I elements within A elements, such as setting the font size to 1.375 rem. A span, this selector applies styles to the span element that appears on hover or focus of the element. It positions the element to the right of the element, sets the background color and padding, and adds a border radius and a before pseudo-element for a triangular shape. Details, this selector applies styles to the details element, such as positioning it at the bottom right of the screen and setting the color to #05043E. It is displayed as a flex container with a column direction. Details div, this selector applies styles to the div element within the details element. It positions the element absolutely and sets its maximum height and width. It also adds padding, a border radius, and a box shadow for visual effect. An overflow property is set to auto so that a scroll bar appears when the content exceeds the element's height. Details div: WebKit scroll bar, this selector applies styles to the scroll bar within the details div element. It sets the width and background color. Details div: WebKit scroll bar thumb, this selector applies styles to the thumb of the scroll bar within the details div element. It sets the width, border radius, and background color. Details div *+*, this selector applies styles to any element that immediately follows another element within the details div element. It adds a top margin. Details div p code, this selector applies styles to code elements within p elements within the details div element. It sets the font size, font family, and font weight. Details div pre, this selector applies styles to pre elements within the details div element. It sets the whitespace property to pre-line, which preserves line breaks but collapses consecutive spaces. It also sets the background color, border radius, font family, and font size. Details open div, this selector applies styles to the div element within the details element when it is open. It adds an animation that scales the element to appear smoothly. Summary, this selector applies styles to the summary element within the details element, such as centering the contents horizontally and vertically, setting the font weight to 600, and adding a background color and box shadow. It also removes the default marker for the details element. Summary I, this selector applies styles to I elements within summary elements, such as setting the font size to 1.375 m and adding a margin to the left. At WebKit keyframe scale and at keyframe scale, these selectors define the scale animation used when the details element is opened. They set the initial and final scale values and the duration and easing of the animation. The @WebKit keyframes rule is used for compatibility with older versions of WebKit-based browsers. You can find source of this video in my GitHub, I share it on description. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below and I'll do my best to respond. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this.